The Oklahoma dust clawed at everything, coating the small farmhouse in a perpetual film of brown. Inside, Silas, a man weathered by hardship and worry, stared out the window. The bank was breathing down his neck. Another bad harvest, another failed attempt to coax life from the parched land, meant the end. He'd already sold everything he could bear to part with: the livestock, the tools, even his wife Martha's prized china. But it wasn't enough. He had 3 daughters: Ruth, the eldest, strong and capable; Sarah, quiet and thoughtful; and Lily, the youngest, barely 10 years old with eyes too big for her thin face. They were all he had left of Martha, who had succumbed to the fever 2 years prior. The thought of losing them, of them going hungry, was a constant ache in his gut. Ruth, at 18, understood the gravity of their situation more than the others. She tried to help, mending clothes, stretching meals, but her efforts were a drop in the bucket against the rising tide of debt. Sarah, 16, buried herself in books, tried to escape the harsh reality. Lily, too young to fully comprehend, sensed the tension in the air, the unspoken fear that hung heavy in the small house. Silas slumped into a chair, the weight of his decision pressing down on him. He'd wrestled with it for weeks, pacing through sleepless nights, praying for a miracle that never came. He'd even considered leaving, abandoning them all to start anew somewhere else. But the thought of them alone, unprotected, kept him rooted to this desolate place. He couldn't do it. He wouldn't. He looked at the worn photograph of Martha on the mantelpiece. Her smiling face seemed to mock him. What would she think of what he was about to do? He could almost hear her gentle voice, pleading with him to find another way. But there was no other way. He was trapped, cornered, with no other choice but the unthinkable. His calloused hands tightened into fists. He would do anything, even this, to protect his girls from starving, even if it broke his heart in the process. The auction was the only way. The announcement was tacked to the general store's bulletin board, a stark white square against the weathered wood. Auction, Daughters of Silas Harding. The words seemed to scream in the otherwise quiet town of Harmony Creek. Silas hadn't wanted to advertise it. He'd hoped to keep it quiet, a private transaction, but the banker, a portly man named Mr. Henderson, insisted. The more eyes, the more bids, Silas, he'd said, his voice lacking any semblance of sympathy. It's business. The news spread like wildfire. Whispers followed Silas as he walked down the street. Some offered pitying glances, others outright scorn. The women of the town clucked their tongues, shaking their heads in disapproval. Even in these hard times, selling your children was seen as a moral failing, a sign of utter desperation. Ruth overheard Mrs. Abernathy, the baker's wife, talking about them outside the general store. "Poor girls," she said, her voice dripping with false sympathy. "Imagine being sold like cattle." Ruth's face burned with shame. She hurried back home, tears welling in her eyes. Silas called his daughters into the living room. He sat them down, his hands trembling. He'd been putting it off, dreading this moment. "Girls," he began, his voice hoarse, I have something to tell you." He explained the situation as gently as he could, glossing over the worst parts, trying to shield them from the full horror of it. He told them about the debt, the bank's threat of foreclosure, the impossibility of providing for them any other way. He told them it wasn't forever, that it was just until he got back on his feet. A lie, but one he desperately needed to believe. Ruth, ever the pragmatist, understood. She didn't cry, didn't argue. She simply nodded, her face pale. Sarah, however, burst into tears. "No, Papa. Please no," she sobbed, clinging to him. Lily, too young to fully grasp the implications, started to cry as well, mimicking her older sister's distress. Silas hugged them tightly, his heart breaking. "I'm so sorry," he whispered, his voice choked with emotion. "I'm doing this because I love you. I'm doing this to protect you." The auction was scheduled for the following Saturday. The town square, usually a place of laughter and community, would become a stage for their humiliation. The Harding daughters would be sold. Saturday arrived like a storm cloud, dark and heavy. The town square, usually bustling with activity, felt eerily silent save for the nervous chatter of onlookers. A makeshift stage had been erected, draped with a faded American flag. Silas stood beside it, his face etched with shame. He avoided eye contact with everyone. Ruth was the first to be led onto the stage. She wore her best dress, a simple blue cotton frock that had belonged to her mother. She held her head high, trying to project an air of confidence she didn't feel. Her eyes scanned the crowd, searching for a friendly face, but found only curiosity and veiled pity. Mr. Henderson, the banker, acted as the auctioneer. He cleared his throat and began his spiel, his voice booming across the square. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have here Ruth Harding, a fine young woman, strong and capable. She's a hard worker, a good cook, and a loyal companion. What am I bid?" The bidding started slowly, hesitant at first. Men looked Ruth up and down, assessing her worth. Some were farmers looking for cheap labor. Others were widowers seeking a wife. Still others had more sinister intentions. Ruth felt a chill run down her spine. The bids gradually increased. A gruff-looking farmer with calloused hands offered $20. A middle-aged shopkeeper countered with $30. The bidding went back and forth, each offer chipping away at Ruth's dignity. Finally, the bidding narrowed down to two men, the farmer and a saloon owner known for his shady dealings. The farmer, his face red with determination, offered $50. The saloon owner, a sneer on his face, raised the bid to $75. Mr. Henderson slammed his gavel. "Going once, going twice sold. To Mr. Thompson for $75. Ruth was led off the stage, her face numb. Mr. Thompson approached her, his eyes gleaming with a predatory hunger. He took her arm, his grip tight. "Come along, girl," he said, his voice raspy. "You'll be working for me now." Silas watched as Ruth was led away, his heart breaking into a million pieces. He wanted to stop them, to snatch her back, but he knew he couldn't. He had made a deal, and he had to honor it, no matter how much it hurt. He closed his eyes, tears streaming down his face. He had just sold his eldest daughter, and there were two more to go. Next was Sarah. She was more withdrawn than Ruth, her spirit more fragile. Silas watched her walk to the stage, her head bowed, her shoulders slumped. She clutched a small, worn book to her chest, her only comfort in this ordeal. Mr. Henderson's voice boomed again, but this time it seemed to lack some of its earlier enthusiasm. Perhaps even he was starting to feel the weight of the situation. "Now we have Sarah Harding, a quiet and gentle soul. She's a skilled seamstress and a lover of books. A fine addition to any home." The bidding for Sarah was even more subdued than for Ruth. Many of the men seemed hesitant, perhaps put off by her quiet demeanor. Some whispered that she was too bookish, not practical enough for farm work. Silas felt a surge of anger at their judgment, but he bit back his words. He couldn't afford to alienate potential bidders. A local schoolteacher, a kind-faced woman named Miss Eleanor, stepped forward. She offered $50. Silas felt a flicker of hope. Miss Eleanor was a good woman, and he knew Sarah would be safe with her. But then a different bidder entered the fray. A wealthy rancher named Mr. Caldwell, known for his sternness and his vast land holdings, offered $60. Miss Eleanor hesitated, her face etched with disappointment. She couldn't afford to go any higher. Mr. Caldwell raised his bid to $70. Miss Eleanor shook her head sadly and stepped back. Silas's hope dwindled. Mr. Henderson slammed the gavel. "Going once, going twice sold. To Mr. Caldwell for $70. Sarah was led away, her eyes wide with fear. She looked back at Silas, pleading for help, but he could only offer a weak smile and a silent prayer. Mr. Caldwell took her arm, his grip firm. "Come, girl," he said, his voice cold and businesslike. "I have work for you." Silas watched Sarah disappear into the crowd, her book clutched tightly in her hand. He knew she would miss her books, her quiet time, her escape from the harsh realities of their lives. He had taken that away from her. He had sold her dreams. And now, only Lily remained. The thought of putting his youngest daughter through this ordeal was almost unbearable. But he had no choice. He had to do it. He had to protect them all, even if it meant sacrificing his own soul. Lily stood backstage, her small hand trembling in Silas's. He knelt down, trying to meet her gaze, but she kept her eyes fixed on the ground. Her face was pale, her lips tight. He knew she was scared, terrified even. He gently stroked her hair. "It'll be all right, sweetheart," he whispered, knowing it was another lie. "Just be brave. Be strong." But Lily was neither brave nor strong. She was a child, innocent and vulnerable, about to be thrown into a world she didn't understand. Mr. Henderson's voice cut through the air. "And now, ladies and gentlemen, we have Lily Harding, the youngest of the Harding sisters. She's a sweet and gentle girl, full of life and laughter. A blank slate, ready to be molded." Silas led Lily onto the stage. She clung to his hand, her small body trembling. The crowd was quieter now, the earlier excitement replaced by a sense of unease. Even the most hardened men in the town seemed uncomfortable with the prospect of bidding on a child. Mr. Henderson started the bidding, but no one responded. He tried again, his voice strained. "Come on, folks, surely someone can offer something for this sweet girl. She's a hard worker, a good helper around the house." Still silence. Silas felt a wave of panic wash over him. What if no one bid on Lily? What would happen to her then? He couldn't bear the thought of her ending up on the streets, alone and unprotected. Mr. Henderson lowered his voice, his face flushed. $5? Anyone? Just $5 to take this girl off Silas's hands. A few hesitant glances, but no bids. Silas looked out at the crowd, his heart pounding. He saw pity, discomfort, but no offers. It was as if Lily was invisible, unwanted. Then, a voice spoke out from the back of the crowd. It was gruff and unfamiliar, but it cut through the silence like a knife. "I'll take her." Everyone turned to see who had spoken. A tall, imposing figure stepped forward, his face hidden in the shadows of his hat. He walked slowly towards the stage, his eyes fixed on Lily. Silas felt a flicker of hope, but also a sense of unease. Who was this man? And why did he want Lily? He stepped protectively in front of his daughter, his eyes narrowed. "Who are you?" he demanded. "And what do you want with my daughter?" The man stopped at the foot of the stage, his eyes meeting Silas's. He couldn't just hand over his daughter to him. "What kind of home?" Silas asked, his voice tight with suspicion. "What do you want with her?" Caleb hesitated for a moment, then removed his hat, revealing a face etched with grief and weariness. His eyes, though kind, held a deep sadness. "I lost my wife and child last winter," he said, his voice low. "The fever. My ranch is empty, silent. I need someone to care for." He looked at Lily, his gaze softening. "She reminds me of my daughter," he added, almost as an afterthought. Silas studied Caleb's face, searching for any sign of deception. He saw only sorrow and a desperate longing. But still, he couldn't shake his unease. "I don't have much money," Caleb continued, "but I can offer her a good home, food, clothes, a roof over her head. I'll treat her like my own daughter. I swear it." Mr. Henderson, eager to conclude the proceedings, stepped forward. "Come now, Silas, what do you have to lose? No one else wants her. This is her only chance." Silas glared at the banker, but he knew Henderson was right. Lily was unwanted, a burden in a town struggling to survive. Caleb was her only hope. He looked at Lily, her eyes wide with fear and confusion. He thought of Martha, of the promise he had made to protect her children. He couldn't bear the thought of Lily ending up alone, unloved. He took a deep breath and made his decision. "All right," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "You can take her." Caleb's eyes lit up with relief. He stepped onto the stage and gently took Lily's hand. "Don't worry, little one," he said, his voice kind. "I'll take care of you." Lily looked at Caleb, then back at Silas, her face a mixture of fear and confusion. She didn't know this man, didn't understand why her father was giving her away. But she trusted her father, and she knew he wouldn't do anything to hurt her. Silas watched as Caleb led Lily away, his heart aching with guilt and sorrow. He had sold 2 of his daughters, and now he was giving away the 3rd. He had failed them all. But as he watched Lily walk away, he saw a glimmer of hope in her eyes. Perhaps, just perhaps, she would find happiness with this grieving widower. Perhaps Caleb could give her the life he could no longer provide. And perhaps, in time, he could forgive himself for what he had done. The dust swirled around him, a silent testament to his broken dreams. He was alone now, with nothing but his guilt and his memories. He had to find a way to make amends, to earn back his daughter's forgiveness. He had to find a way to survive. Caleb hadn't planned on attending the auction. He had little interest in the affairs of Harmony Creek, a town he usually avoided. But the whispers had reached even his secluded ranch, whispers of a desperate man selling his daughters. A morbid curiosity, and perhaps a flicker of something akin to pity, had drawn him in. He had lost everything the previous winter. His wife, Sarah, a gentle woman with a heart of gold, and his daughter, Emily, a bright and bubbly 5-year-old, had both succumbed to the fever that swept through the region. The ranch, once filled with laughter and love, was now a tomb, haunted by memories. He tried to keep busy, tending to the livestock, mending fences, anything to keep his mind from dwelling on his loss. But the silence was deafening, the emptiness overwhelming. He longed for the sound of Sarah's laughter, the feel of Emily's small hand in his. The auction had been a grim spectacle. He had watched, his heart aching, as the Harding sisters were paraded before the townsfolk, their dignity stripped bare. He had seen the fear in their eyes, the desperation in their faces. It reminded him of his own helplessness as he watched Sarah and Emily slip away. When Lily was brought onto the stage, Caleb felt something stir within him. She was so small, so fragile, so utterly alone. She reminded him of Emily, of the innocence and vulnerability he had lost. He couldn't bear to see her sold, to see her subjected to the same humiliation as her sisters. He didn't know why he spoke out, why he offered to take her in. It was an impulse, a sudden urge to protect her, to give her the love and care he could no longer give to his own daughter. He knew it was a foolish decision. He was a broken man, ill-equipped to raise child. He had nothing to offer her but a lonely ranch and a heart full of sorrow. But he couldn't turn away. He had to do something, anything, to ease the pain, to fill the void that had consumed him. As he led Lily away from the auction, he wondered what he had gotten himself into. He had no idea how to be a father again. He didn't know if he could ever love again. But he knew one thing. He would do everything in his power to protect Lily, to give her the life she deserved. He owed her that much. He owed it to Sarah and Emily. He owed it to himself. The long road to his ranch stretched before them, a path into the unknown. He took a deep breath and started to walk, Lily's small hand clasped tightly in his. The healing could now begin for both of them. The ride to Caleb's ranch was long and silent. Lily sat beside him in the wagon, her small body tense. She didn't speak, didn't ask questions. She simply stared straight ahead, her eyes fixed on the horizon. Caleb tried to make small talk, but his words felt hollow and inadequate. He told her about the ranch, about the animals, about the wide-open spaces. But Lily remained silent, her expression unchanged. He realized he was failing. He didn't know how to connect with her, how to reassure her. He was a rancher, not a father. He was used to dealing with cattle, not children. As they approached the ranch, Lily finally spoke. Her voice was barely a whisper. Will you sell me too? Caleb's heart ached. He pulled the wagon to a stop and turned to face her. No, Lily, he said, his voice firm. I will never sell you. I promise. You're not a possession. You're a person. I brought you here to be my daughter. Lily looked at him, her eyes searching his face. My daughter, she repeated, her voice filled with disbelief. Caleb nodded. Yes, I lost my daughter last winter. You remind me of her. I want you to be my daughter, to fill the empty space in my life. He reached out and gently stroked her hair. I won't force you to do anything you don't want to do, he said. You can call me Caleb, or you can call me Papa, whatever you're comfortable with. I just want you to be happy here. Lily remained silent for a moment. Then a small smile crept across her face. Papa, she whispered, testing the word on her tongue. Caleb smiled back. Yes, Lily, Papa. He knew it wouldn't be easy. He took her hand and led her towards the ranch house, a small, weathered building surrounded by endless fields of grass. Welcome home, Lily, he said, his voice filled with hope. Welcome home. As they walked towards the house, Caleb noticed something. Lily was no longer trembling. Others whispered that Caleb was strange, eccentric, perhaps even dangerous. Silas, meanwhile, was consumed by guilt and worry. He tried to convince himself that he had done the right thing, that he had given Lily the best possible chance. But the doubt gnawed at him, a constant reminder of his failure. He visited Mr. Thompson and Mr. Caldwell, checking on Ruth and Sarah, trying to assuage his conscience. Ruth was working hard at the saloon, cleaning and serving drinks. She was quiet and withdrawn, but she assured Silas that she was being treated fairly. Caldwell, however, was less forthcoming. He simply stated that Sarah was doing her job and that he expected her to continue to do so. Silas saw a flicker of fear in Sarah's eyes, and his heart sank. He considered visiting Caleb's ranch to check on Lily, but he hesitated. He didn't want to interfere, to disrupt whatever fragile peace they had found. He also feared Caleb's judgment, the unspoken accusation in his eyes. Lily, for her part, was still adjusting to her new life. Caleb was kind and patient, but she missed her sisters, her old home, her familiar surroundings. The ranch was vast and lonely, the silence broken only by the wind and the sounds of the animals. She helped Caleb with chores, feeding the chickens, collecting eggs, tending to the garden. She learned to ride a horse, to shoot a rifle, to survive in the harsh and unforgiving landscape. Slowly, she began to open up to Caleb, to trust him. She told him about her dreams, her fears, her memories of her mother. He listened patiently, offering words of comfort and support. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, Lily asked Caleb a question. "Why did you choose me?" Caleb smiled gently. "Because you needed a home," he said, "and I needed a daughter." He paused for a moment, then added, "And because you reminded me of Emily. You have her spirit, her kindness, her innocence. I want to give you the life she never had." Lily smiled back, her eyes filled with gratitude. She knew she would never replace Emily, but she was grateful for Caleb's love and acceptance. She was finally starting to feel like she belonged, like she had found a home. The whispers and speculation of Harmony Creek seemed distant and unimportant. She had a new life now, a new family, and she was determined to make the most of it. The healing was underway. The ranch house, though simple, was clean and comfortable. Caleb had made sure of that. He had cleared out Emily's room, replacing the toys with books and a small sewing kit. He wanted Lily to feel at home, to feel safe. But Lily's grief was a constant presence. She missed her sisters terribly. At night, she would cry softly in her sleep, calling out their names. Caleb would sit beside her bed, stroking her hair, whispering words of comfort. He tried to fill the void in her life, teaching her new skills, sharing stories of his past. He showed her how to ride a horse, how to tend to the garden, how to shoot a rifle. He taught her about the stars, about the constellations, about the vastness of the universe. Lily, in turn, brought a spark of life back into Caleb's world. Her laughter, though infrequent, was like music to his ears. Her curiosity and eagerness to learn reminded him of Emily. He found himself looking forward to each day, to each new adventure. "It's all right, Lily," he said, his voice calm and reassuring. "We'll be all right. Just hold on tight." They huddled together, waiting for the storm to pass. As the thunder rumbled and the lightning flashed, the fear was still there, but it was slowly fading, replaced by a growing sense of trust and belonging. The healing was progressing, slowly but surely. They were becoming a family, bound not by blood, but by love and a shared sense of loss. And together, they would weather any storm that came their way. The vast, unforgiving landscape of the West was a little less lonely, a little less daunting, with someone to share it. Before Lily came to the ranch, Caleb's days were a blur of monotonous tasks, each one a painful reminder of what he had lost. He went through the motions, tending to the cattle, mending fences, but his heart wasn't in it. The ranch felt empty, lifeless, a constant echo of his grief. But Lily's presence changed everything. Her curiosity and enthusiasm sparked something within him, a renewed sense of purpose. He found himself looking forward to teaching her about ranching, about the land, about the animals. He showed her how to milk a cow, how to shear a sheep, how to brand a calf. He taught her how to read the weather, how to track animals, how to survive in the wilderness. Lily was a quick learner, eager to absorb every bit of knowledge he shared. Her questions were endless, her enthusiasm contagious. She brought a light back into his life that he thought had been extinguished forever. He found himself laughing again, something he hadn't done since Sarah and Emily died. He found himself smiling, not out of obligation, but out of genuine joy. He found himself feeling alive again. Lily's presence also helped him to confront his grief. He talked to her about Sarah and Emily, sharing stories of their lives, their laughter, their love. He showed her pictures of them, pointing out their features, their personalities. Lily listened patiently, her eyes filled with sympathy. She didn't try to offer platitudes or empty words of comfort. She simply listened, offering her presence, her understanding. One day, as they were tending to the garden, Lily asked Caleb a question. "Do you still miss them?" Caleb hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "Every day," he said, his voice choked with emotion. "But it's not as painful as it used to be. You've helped me to heal, Lily. You've brought light back into my life." Lily smiled and took his hand. "I miss them too," she said. "But I'm glad I'm here with you, Papa." Caleb squeezed her hand tightly. He knew he would never fully recover from the loss of Sarah and Emily. But Lily had given him a reason to live, a reason to hope, a reason to love again. She had brought him back from the brink of despair. And for that, he would be forever grateful. The ranch was no longer a tomb, but a home filled with love, laughter, and the promise of a brighter future. The healing was complete, not in the sense that the pain was gone, but in the sense that it was now accompanied by hope and a renewed zest for life. They were a family, forged in sorrow, but bound by love. And together, they would face whatever challenges lay ahead. Their newfound peace was shattered one sweltering afternoon. A cloud of dust appeared on the horizon, growing larger and closer with alarming speed. Caleb squinted, his hand shielding his eyes. As the dust settled, a group of men on horseback emerged, led by a burly, scarred man with a cruel glint in his eyes. "Caleb Harding," the man shouted, his voice raspy. "I'm Jedediah Stone, and I'm here to collect what's owed to me." Caleb recognized the name instantly. Jedediah Stone was a notorious land grabber, known for his ruthless tactics and his disregard for the law. He had clashed with Caleb years ago, before Sarah and Emily died, over a disputed water source. Caleb had won the dispute, but Stone had vowed revenge. "You have nothing that belongs to you here, Stone," Caleb said, his voice firm. Stone sneered. "That's where you're wrong, Harding. I have a claim on this land. A legal claim." He pulled out a document and waved it in the air. "Signed and sealed. You're trespassing on my property." Caleb knew Stone was lying. The document was likely forged, a fabrication designed to intimidate him. But he also knew that Stone was not a man to be reasoned with. He was violent, unpredictable, and he would stop at nothing to get what he wanted. Lily stood beside Caleb, her eyes wide with fear. She had heard stories about Jedediah Stone, about his cruelty and his ruthlessness. She knew that he was a threat to their newfound peace, to their newfound family. "Get off my land, Stone," Caleb said, his hand instinctively reaching for the rifle leaning against the porch. "Before I make you." Stone laughed. "You and what army, Harding? You're just a broken-down widower with a little girl to protect. You're no match for me." He gestured to his men, who dismounted and began to spread out, surrounding the ranch house. Caleb knew he was outnumbered, outgunned, but he wouldn't back down. He would protect Lily, no matter the cost. "This is my home, Stone," Caleb said, his voice unwavering. "And I'll be damned if I let you take it from me." He grabbed the rifle and took aim, his eyes fixed on Jedediah Stone. The battle for the ranch, for their future, was about to begin. The peace they had found was about to be tested, and Lily would discover a strength within herself she never knew she possessed. The past was coming back to haunt them, threatening to destroy everything they had built. And in the face of this threat, Caleb and Lily would have to fight, not just for their land, but for their very survival. Caleb fired a warning shot, the bullet whizzing past Stone's head. The land grabber flinched, but he didn't back down. "You're making a big mistake, Harding," he snarled. "A very big mistake." As Stone's men advanced, Caleb knew they couldn't hold them off for long. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and trapped. But he wouldn't surrender. He would fight to the death to protect Lily, to protect their home. Suddenly, Lily stepped forward, her eyes blazing with defiance. "You're the one making a mistake, Jedediah Stone," she said, her voice surprisingly strong. "You think we're weak, that we're easy targets. But you're wrong." She pointed to a thicket of bushes near the barn. "Do you see those bushes, Mr. Stone? They're covered in poison ivy, and I just happened to dump a whole bucket of honey all over them." Stone and his men exchanged uneasy glances. They knew that poison ivy was a serious threat, causing painful rashes and blisters. And honey would attract bees, swarms of angry bees. "You wouldn't dare," Stone said, his voice wavering. Lily smiled. "Oh, but I would," she said. "And I have plenty more honey where that came from." She then pointed to the water well. "And that well? I just threw in a whole bunch of skunk cabbage. The water will be undrinkable for weeks." Stone's face turned red with rage. He knew that Lily was bluffing, but he couldn't be sure. He couldn't risk his men getting poisoned or stung. "Get out of here, Stone," Caleb said, seizing the opportunity. "Leave my land and never come back, or I'll make sure you regret it." Stone hesitated for a moment, then spat on the ground. "This isn't over, Harding," he said. "I'll be back, and next time you won't be so lucky." He signaled to his men, and they mounted their horses and rode away, leaving Caleb and Lily standing alone in the dust. Caleb stared at Lily, his eyes filled with admiration. He had never seen her so brave, so resourceful. She had faced down a gang of ruthless outlaws and forced them to retreat. "Where did you learn all that?" he asked, his voice filled with amazement. Lily smiled. "I've been paying attention," she said. "I've been learning from you, Papa." Caleb pulled her close and hugged her tightly. "You're a true Harding, Lily," he said. "A true Harding." He knew that Stone would be back. He knew that the threat hadn't been eliminated, only delayed. But he also knew that he wasn't alone. He had Lily by his side, a brave and resourceful young woman who was willing to fight for what was right. And together, they would face whatever challenges lay ahead. The courage Lily displayed had bolstered his own spirits and given him renewed hope. He knew, whatever happened, they would face it together. The bond between them had been forged in sorrow, but it was now tempered with steel. A few weeks later, Silas arrived at the ranch, his face etched with worry and desperation. He was thinner than Lily remembered, his clothes were worn and patched, and his eyes held a haunted look. Caleb greeted him cautiously, his hand instinctively moving towards his rifle. He didn't trust Silas, not after what he had done. "I need to talk to Lily," Silas said, his voice barely a whisper. Caleb hesitated, then nodded. He stepped aside and allowed Silas to approach Lily, who stood on the porch, her expression a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. "Lily," Silas began, his voice choked with emotion. I need your help." Lily looked at her father, her heart aching with pity. She knew that he had made a terrible mistake, but she couldn't bring herself to hate him. He was still her father, and she still loved him, despite everything. "What is it, Papa?" she asked, her voice soft. Silas explained that he had lost everything. The bank had foreclosed on his farm, and he was now penniless and homeless. He had nowhere to go, no one to turn to. "I know I don't deserve it," he said, his voice breaking. "But I'm begging you, Lily. Can you help me? Can you forgive me?" Lily looked at Caleb, seeking his guidance. Caleb nodded slightly, signaling that it was her decision. Lily took a deep breath and turned back to her father. "I forgive you, Papa," she said, her voice firm. "But I can't help you. I don't have anything to give." Silas's face fell. He had hoped that Lily would take him in, that she would provide him with a home. But he understood her reluctance. He had hurt her deeply, and he couldn't expect her to forgive him so easily. "I understand," he said, his voice filled with resignation. "I'll leave you alone." He turned to walk away, his shoulders slumped with defeat. But then Lily spoke again. "Wait, Papa," she said. There is something you can do. Silas turned back, his eyes filled with hope. You can help me protect this ranch, Lily said. Jedediah Stone is still out there, and he's determined to take our land. We need all the help we can get. Silas hesitated for a moment, then nodded. I'll do it, he said. I'll do anything to help you, Lily. Anything to make amends. And so, Silas stayed at the ranch, working alongside Caleb and Lily, helping them to prepare for Stone's return. He was still consumed by guilt and remorse, but he was also determined to earn back his daughter's trust and respect. He was facing the consequences of his past, and he was finally ready to take responsibility for his actions. He would prove that he was worthy of their forgiveness, even if it meant putting his own life on the line. The auction had set in motion a chain of events that were now forcing them all to confront their pasts, their mistakes, and their hopes for the future. And in the face of this adversity, they would discover the true meaning of family, forgiveness, and redemption. Jedediah Stone returned a few weeks later, this time with even more men and a renewed determination. He had learned from his previous mistake and was prepared for any tricks Lily might have up her sleeve. Caleb, Lily, and Silas stood side by side, ready to defend their home. They had fortified the ranch, setting up barricades and preparing traps. They knew they were outnumbered, but they were determined to fight to the end. The battle was fierce and bloody. Stone's men attacked relentlessly, firing their guns and trying to breach the barricades. Caleb, Lily, and Silas fought back with courage and determination, using their rifles and their wits to hold off the attackers. During a lull in the fighting, Stone called out to Caleb. "Give it up, Harding," he shouted. "You can't win. You're outnumbered, outgunned, and out of options." Caleb stared at Stone, his eyes filled with defiance. "This is my home, Stone," he said, "and I'll be damned if I let you take it from me." Suddenly, Silas stepped forward, his face set with determination. "You want this land, Stone?" he shouted. "You'll have to go through me first." Silas charged toward Stone, firing his rifle as he ran. Stone's men returned fire, and Silas fell to the ground, wounded. Lily screamed and ran to her father's side. Caleb, seeing Silas fall, felt a surge of anger and grief. He knew that Silas had sacrificed himself to protect them, to atone for his past mistakes. Caleb unleashed a furious barrage of gunfire, driving back Stone's men. He then scooped up Lily and carried her to safety inside the ranch house. "Stay here," he said, his voice trembling with emotion. "I'm going to finish this." Caleb emerged from the ranch house, his eyes blazing with fury. He fought like a man possessed, his grief and anger fueling his every move. He single-handedly drove back Stone's men, forcing them to retreat. Stone, seeing his men defeated, turned and fled, vowing revenge. Caleb watched as Stone disappeared into the distance, then collapsed to the ground, exhausted and wounded. Lily ran to his side, her eyes filled with tears. "You did it, Papa," she said. "You saved us." Caleb smiled weakly. "We did it, Lily," he said. "We did together." He looked at Silas, lying motionless on the ground. "He helped us too," Caleb said. "He redeemed himself." In the aftermath of the battle, Caleb and Lily buried Silas on the ranch, marking his grave with a simple wooden cross. They had forgiven him for his past mistakes, and they would never forget his sacrifice. Caleb and Lily stood together, their hands clasped tightly. They had faced adversity, they had overcome tragedy, and they had emerged stronger and more united than ever before. They were a family bound by love, loyalty, and a shared sense of purpose. And together, they would face whatever challenges lay ahead. The resolution had been hard-won, but it had forged them into a family in every sense of the word. They had proven that love, forgiveness, and courage could triumph over even the darkest of circumstances. The future was uncertain, but they would face it together as father and daughter, bound by an unbreakable bond. Years passed. The ranch flourished under Caleb and Lily's care. They built a new home, bigger and stronger than the old one, a testament to their resilience and their unwavering spirit. Lily grew into a strong and independent young woman, skilled in ranching, educated in the ways of the world, and fiercely loyal to Caleb. She never forgot her sisters, and she often wondered about their fate. One day, a letter arrived, bearing the postmark of a distant city. It was from Ruth. She had left the saloon and found work as a seamstress. She was doing well, she wrote, and she had never forgotten Lily. Lily wrote back immediately, inviting Ruth to come and visit the ranch. A few weeks later, Ruth arrived, her face beaming with joy. The sisters embraced, tears streaming down their faces. Ruth stayed at the ranch for several weeks, helping Lily with the chores and sharing stories of her life. She was amazed by Lily's strength and her independence, and she was grateful for the love and acceptance she had found with Caleb. Before Ruth left, she promised to visit again soon. She also vowed to find Sarah and bring her back to the ranch. A few months later, Ruth returned, this time with Sarah in tow. Sarah was quiet and withdrawn, but she was happy to be reunited with her sisters. The three sisters spent hours talking, sharing their experiences and healing old wounds. They realized that despite the hardships they had endured, they were still a family, bound by blood and by love. Caleb watched the sisters with a sense of pride and contentment. He had given Lily a home, but she had given him so much more. She had brought light back into his life, and she had helped him to heal from his grief. He knew that Sarah and Ruth would eventually leave the ranch, to build their own lives and to pursue their own dreams. But he also knew that they would always be a part of his family, bound together by the shared experiences and the unwavering love. As the sun set over the horizon, casting a golden glow over the ranch, Caleb and Lily stood together on the porch, their hands clasped tightly. They had faced adversity, they had overcome tragedy, and they had emerged stronger and more united than ever before. They were a family bound by love, loyalty, and a shared sense of purpose. And together, they would face whatever challenges lay ahead. The harsh West had tested them, but it had also revealed their strength, their resilience, and their unwavering capacity for love. The auction had been a dark chapter in their lives, but had also led them to each other, to a bond that could never be broken. The future stretched before them, uncertain but full of promise, and they would face it together, as father and daughter, forever bound by the love and acceptance they had found in the heart of the unforgiving West. The unconventional family they had created was a testament to the enduring power of the human spirit, a beacon of hope in a world often filled with darkness and despair. Their story would be told and retold, a legend whispered on the windswept plains, a reminder that even in the most desperate of circumstances, love and forgiveness can triumph over all.